Welcome everyone to the Open Talk on Precision Medicine. I'm Alessandra Picella and I'm in charge of the Science and Technology Office of the Embassy of Switzerland here in Seoul. We belong to a big network, SwissNex, whose mission is to connect the dots in science and technology between Switzerland and all the countries all around the world. We have more than 25 locations, and we connect the dots also in innovation and higher education. Today's event falls under the umbrella of the Life Science Initiative, a public-private partnership which was founded based on an MOU between the Swiss Ministry of Economic Affairs, Research and Education and the Korean Ministry of Health and Welfare in 2016. The two governments and the Korean branches of Swiss companies like Novartis, Roche, and Roche Diagnostics contribute to the initiative, aiming to foster R&D cooperation in life science between the two countries and support innovative startups. I'd like to welcome and introduce the speakers of today. And I will do starting from the first speaker, who is Kelly Henline. Kelly is the head real-world data strategy and global product strategy at Roche. Kelly's team is responsible for defining Roche Pharmaceutical strategic direction for investing in a real-world data infrastructure internationally. Prior to this role, Kelly spent 3.5 years as Director of Strategic Partnerships and Initiatives in Oncology and at Genentech. Prior to joining Cross Bio-Oncology in December 2015, she was Director of Public Policy and Reimbursement in Government Affairs. Before joining Genentech in 2011, Kelly's career was started in physician specialty societies, working at the American College of Cardiology, where she worked on the development of clinical practice guidelines, and then the American Academy of Dermatology, where she was Director of Regulatory and Payment Policy. The second speaker of today is Dr. Ji-hyun Kim, and she is currently professor at the Department of Internal Medicine at Seoul National University College of Medicine and Seoul National University Bundang Hospital here in Seoul. She's also a director of a clinical trial center at Seoul National University Bundang Hospital from 2017, and she leads the Korean Precision Medicine Network Group. From 2011 until 2016, she was a chief of the Division of Hematology and Medical Oncology at the Department of Internal Medicine at Seoul National University Bundang Hospital. After graduating with PhD degree, she served as assistant professor at Seoul National University and then was visiting professor at Dana-Farber Cancer Institute in the US for 2 years before serving as associate professor in Seoul. Her research interests include breast medical oncology, geriatric oncology, and she has more than 272 publications with total citation of over 80,000 times. After the presentations, we will have a panel discussion involving the two speakers, and the third panelist will join, who is Johnny Tse, General Manager of Roche Diagnostics Korea, who is in this position since March 2019. Prior to that, he built up the experience as General Manager for Roche Diagnostics Hong Kong and Taiwan for 12 years. He successfully led Roche Diagnostics Hong Kong, overgrew the market, remaining as the top market leader in Hong Kong for 10 consecutive years. Johnny joined Roche in Hong Kong in 1996 as sales executive and took up the position of sales and marketing manager from 2000 to 2002 before moving to China as business management director in 2003. He took up the role of regional director for Southern China region from 2004 to 2007. He was appointed then as general manager for Taiwan in 2007, returning to Hong Kong as a general manager in 2009. The panel discussion will be moderated by our friend and colleague Mario Garcia Lee, CEO of Lighthouse. I will introduce all of them later. Before starting with the presentation from Kelly Henline, I like to give just some quick recommendation. Please, during the presentations of the two speakers, if you have any question, simply type in the Q&A session, section of this Zoom webinar. We will then ask the questions at the end of the presentations. If there will be not enough time to have the answer to your questions, we will ask the speakers to answer to your question in written form, and we will send them after the webinar to all the participants. Now I would like to ask the first speaker of today, Kelly Henline, to start our presentation. So please share your screen, Kelly.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Very happy to be joining you virtually for this great conversation around precision medicine, and to talk a little bit about Roche's efforts to advance what we call personalized healthcare, but we think very much is in line with the concept of precision medicine. Maybe to just set the stage at a very high level, our vision is better outcomes for more patients faster by accelerating the realization of PHC, and that's our shorthand for personalized healthcare in markets. By doing so, our mission is to make PHC a reality in health systems by implementing infrastructure, access and funding models, policies, and clinical practice that's required to deliver better outcomes for more patients faster. And over the course of the next few minutes, I'll explain some examples of how we're aiming to do that. But maybe to start out with a little bit of a visual, this blurry image represents the past, when our view of each patient and their journey was not as clear as it should be. You could tell that there's a person there. You could define them as a patient in this context. And we've made a lot of good progress around personalized healthcare to date, despite limited amounts of data, really emphasizing and focusing on what we can learn through clinical trials specifically. Imagine the progress we could have made if we had greater, deeper understanding of patients and their disease. So today we have a lot of enabling technologies to amplify the scientific advances that redefine personalized healthcare, progressing from treatments for segments of patients toward truly individualized therapies. So how exactly does that happen? We think the key to unlocking this transformation is a new wave of data. There are vast and unprecedented amounts of data being generated now on a daily, hourly, minute-by-minute basis, and it's coming from multiple and new sources. Data that is both deep and rich, from high-resolution tools such as comprehensive genomic profiling or digital pathology, and it's linked, importantly, to patients' outcomes over time. We've always used data to inform our work, but there is no comparison to the data that we have today versus what we've had in the past. So what is the result? It's a much clearer, sharper view of each patient, their disease, and the journey with their disease over time. It's like moving from that grainy image that I showed up front toward a very high resolution photograph. And with this resolution, we believe we can see and understand each patient more clearly than ever before, and what makes each individual an individual. We think of the data that's needed to do this and make the high resolution image that we just saw as meaningful data at scale. And what exactly does that mean? I see this really as the difference between what we often hear about as big data, or simply vast amounts of data for the sake of vastness, as opposed to integrated and high quality data that can truly be used to drive analytics and insights. We're increasingly eager to connect clinical data with omics, imaging, and data derived from digital tools that will keep raising the resolution of our picture of the patient. Unfortunately, these various data types are not always easy to access or readily available. The biggest viable source of clinical data is actually through the electronic health record, but they are not uniformly adopted and used across all regions, geographies, et cetera. And also, even when vast amounts of clinical data are sitting within an electronic health record, it's pretty far from being analysis ready, right? There's combinations of structured and unstructured data. A lot of the richness is in the unstructured parts of the data, and it takes some effort and expertise in order to actually glean the insights from that. There's so much promise here. Is really we can only benefit from directly the roughly 4% of patients that are participating in clinical trials. And what we're really trying to do is make sure that we can learn from those other 96% of patients whose journeys can help us understand disease and treatment better. Our goal is to capture and derive insights from all of these data sources. Meaningful data at scale and advanced analytics gives us the possibility to better understand every patient's journey and create insights for our pipeline, the way we do research and development, and the way that patients are treated. We see this as a self-reinforcing circle or engine, and we need to work on all aspects of this circle in parallel. With more patients joining these ecosystems, we can create better insights and improve care, which increases the benefits for patients to join and participate in these ecosystems. As you may be aware, Roche, over the past few years, has acquired a couple of companies, one being Flatiron, which is an oncology real-world data company, and Foundation Medicine, which of course is comprehensive genomic profiling. And with that, plus our very close collaboration with Roche Diagnostics, collectively, these assets and complementary points of view really help us drive our personalized healthcare mission. The transformative effects of using insights from data will have positive impacts throughout the entire value chain, translating to benefits for the whole healthcare ecosystem. So I love to think about this, smarter and more efficient R&D. How can we be making better decisions, go, no go for different phases, clinical trials really early in this phase, and then all the way through to how we're actually improving the personalization of care and the access that patients have to what is most likely to improve their outcomes. I want to give a kind of a simple overview of what a personalized healthcare future could actually look like. This schematic represents what we see as an ideal patient journey when it's based on a personalized healthcare approach. First, patients have access to comprehensive genomic profiling to ensure that they get that early and accurate diagnosis with the most relevant information possible. That information really needs to flow into some visualization and representation at the point of care whether it's clinical decision support or a molecular tumor board or whatever version of that is viable within a particular geography. We want to see that data really represented and drive the decision making for that patient. The patient would then have access to the molecularly guided treatment option through thoughtful access models based on data. And importantly, those outcomes would be captured and fed back into a learning loop for regulatory, policy, and other applications. We need to work together with a lot of stakeholders in order to achieve this vision. Importantly, we really look for like-minded stakeholders who share a vision of improving patient care in this way. Patients, of course, are core and central, and we're striving to be a respected and preferred partner to all people who are providing their data to us. This is not something that we take lightly at all. The protection and responsible use of personal data is reflected in our daily operations. It is part of our Roche group code of conduct. It's something that each and every person that works within Roche not only gets training on, but really we strive for people to embody this sense of duty around patient data, which of course, when we access it is de-identified, anonymized, et cetera. And with that, I would note that we comply with all applicable data privacy laws, including the Swiss Data Protection Act and the European Union General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR, on the protection of individuals with regard to the processing of personal data and on the free movement of data. For physicians, we're working with world-leading companies in the field of genomics and real-world data, as I mentioned, Flatiron and Foundation Medicine, to name a couple. And we build strategic partnerships, such as with GE Healthcare, to drive the development of new diagnostics and therapies. We also work, really importantly, with governments and payers to learn how we can make sure that the price of medicines reflects the value that they're delivering to the individual patient. We also work very closely with regulators to understand how real-world data can accelerate the way new medicines get to patients. Going to bring back this image again to bring a little bit more specific example about a collaboration that has been publicly announced and reflects our approach to advancing personalized healthcare within specific countries. In Australia, Roche supported a 5-way public-private partnership with the Ministry of Health, 2 clinical trial networks, and other biopharma partners to increase patient access to genomic profiling and targeted therapies for 1,000 lung cancer patients. The design of the study was specifically tailored to address the current evidence gaps in Australia for genomic profiling and targeted therapies. This initiative was co-funded by the Ministry of Health and Industry. And at Roche, we're incredibly excited about this because it provides an ecosystem that can be added to over time with newer technologies, medical advancements, or concepts that we want to bring into these markets to test, understand how it will impact decision-making, understand how it will support the ability of providers to treat their patients in the best way. And in fact, we're already seeing other industry partners commit to additional investment to expand access to therapies to eligible patients within this construct. So this is far from just being a Roche thing. We think for this to really flourish over time, that one, it really requires co-investment with that local government and stakeholders and with Roche, but then importantly, other industry partners need to be able to be involved as well, and that's something we're very open to and exploring actively. I'd also just like to talk about Korea as being a prime location for personalized healthcare advances. There's a tremendous opportunity here, and this is based on a very strong baseline of universal healthcare coverage, a strong healthcare infrastructure, and I think just a real desire to lead in innovation in a lot of ways. Certainly, Korea is an important market to Roche, is a leading, as a market leader in APAC region, and the high adoption rate of electronic health records, as I mentioned earlier, with that being a really rich source of clinical data, the adoption and usage within Korea is certainly an important primer to being able to advance this sort of agenda. The fact that next generation sequencing is already embedded in clinical practice, and hospitals are already exploring ways to support precision oncology practice, such as at Seoul National University Hospital, which we'll hear about. And this really makes it a prime market for exploring these types of partnerships as well. So I hope I've conveyed here that we're really looking to take a holistic approach. You know, this isn't about selling a product. This is really about supporting the development of what we see as supportive ecosystems that allow these other critical components of a personalized healthcare approach to thrive, and to include the involvement of overall industry and other stakeholders. We do think that we are sort of uniquely equipped to lead the charge here because of our combination of pharmaceuticals and diagnostics within one company. What we see as the premier companies in meaningful data at scale, Flatiron and Foundation Medicine being important partners there as well. We think that our overall sort of portfolio of therapies positions us, and most importantly, and what we hold in really high regard is our reputation as a trusted partner and pioneer, and we hope to continue and increase that over time. So we definitely believe that this future is one where every patient will have the best possible support for their journey. For each of us, that means a future where we can better understand our own health, making treatment decisions based on what has and has not worked for ourselves and others like us, comparing genetic profiles, health histories, lifestyles, and then tracking our response to treatment in real time so that adjustments can be made really quickly along the way. We want to make this real as quickly as possible while ensuring we always take a thoughtful, long-term and sustainable approach to this. And we at Roche, we come to work every day because we want to make a difference in the lives of patients. And this is something that we think is going to allow us to do this like never before. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Kelly. And now I'd like to ask Dr. Kim to share her screen and start her presentation. And also remember all the panelists, all the participants, that if they want to ask questions, they can use the Q&A section in the Zoom. Thanks.
Good morning and good afternoon to you. It's my great pleasure to visit this beautiful embassy of Switzerland. I almost felt like I wanted to work here and share and represent our society of Korean Society of Medical Oncology and Korean Cancer Study Group on thoughts about Korean precision oncology. My title of the talk is about Korean precision oncology, the current status and the future. Oops, sorry. So I want to begin my talk with showing you this beautiful slide. It's about African proverb that it takes a village to raise a child. It's not only mom and dad, but you need a school, a whole village, food, clean water and everything to raise a single child. And I consider precision oncology is much like that. To provide a correct, precise treatment for a patient, we need a very strong medical system to provide precision oncology. We need to acquire correct tissue and make the correct diagnosis and molecular testing. We also need biospecimen repository, and we need to integrate this clinical and genomic data, and also we need a strong storage system. And to gather all this information and discuss the right treatment, we need molecular tumor board, and we need to educate all parts of this medical system. And we need strong precision oncology clinical trials, and also access to molecular profiling guided therapy. So how have we succeeded in building this village in Korea? Precision oncology in Korea really began with reimbursement of next generation sequencing tests. It was almost first in the world, probably, that government make this next generation sequencing test reimbursement by government. So it began in 2017 for 10 most common cancers. and expanded to cover all cancer, all stages in May 2019. It's a co-pay between patient and the government, but so the patient pay 50% of the price. But anyway, so the number of NGS tests grew by year. So it began with 3,000 testing per year in 2017, and now in 2019, almost 20,000 patients were tested with this NGS panel testing. And also, Korea is has strong clinical trial network, and a rank and proportion of total number of clinical trial protocols and clinical trial sites are shown here. And Korea ranks 7 amongst the whole world for clinical trial protocols. And Seoul is very densely populated in terms of population, but also for clinical trial sites. Seoul ranks the top city for having many clinical trial centers. But there are hurdles to overcome to make precision oncology a reality in Korea. We have many NGS test panels, and these are being reimbursed, but there are diverse NGS panels and lack of integrative database. And oncologists are not quite competent yet for interpretation of actionability for this genomic test results. And not many hospitals adopt functioning molecular tumor boards yet. This shows the member survey results of our society, Korean Society of Medical Oncology, performed last year in October. And out of 69 members answering the questionnaire, 71% said that they do not have molecular tumor board in their centers. So, and also access to precision oncology trials are limited, and there are patients who cannot be enrolled to clinical trials because of eligibility. And also access to molecular profiling guided therapy is limited in Korea. I'll discuss further in the next slides. And also we keep finding these genetic alterations when we are doing NGS tests for somatic mutations. So the physicians and hospitals need to be ready for genetic counseling, but we are not quite ready for that yet. And the last but not least is the financial toxicity. This testing results in many subsequent tests and treatments, which will cause quite burden to our patients. So to address this issue, Korean Society of Medical Oncology, together with Korean Cancer Study Group, launched Korean Precision Medicine Networking Group, which aims to improve cancer outcome by making precision oncology a reality for all cancer patients. So we are doing education program and precision medicine network and clinical trials, and precision oncology big data generation and data sharing, and virtual and regional molecular tumor board. So it was founded in 2019, very recently last year. And we have been doing this precision oncology education series, and we have opened an online education program network, and also virtual tumor board and regional tumor board. And also the biggest challenge for molecular profiling guided therapy in Korea is currently drug access. We have a very complicated system for drug approval, and also a very nice system as well. So all the cancer costs are covered by national reimbursement, and cancer patients only pay 5% of the total cost, and almost all patient population are covered by national reimbursement. So that's a very good side. But again, so the reimbursement is quite strictly controlled by government. So there are about 4 ways to receive treatment. If the drug is approved by MDAS and also reimbursed, patients are happy, they only pay 5% of the total cost. So these populations have very relatively low unmet needs. But if the drug is approved by MFDS, but not reimbursed due to high cost of the drug, it is available and patient can get access to the drug, but they have to pay 100% of the total cost. So limiting the access to this molecular profiling guided therapy. So there are efforts ongoing for reimbursement of these drugs. When the drug is not yet approved by MFDS, we need another specific pathway and need to get approval from HIRA, that's called Health Insurance Review and Assessment Service for off-label use. So if the drug A is reimbursed for cancer A, but it's not approved for cancer B, then patients cannot have access to these drugs. So even if the patient want to pay the cost, so it's a very strong challenge. And we have another process called therapeutic use of investigational agents through MFDS, but these processes require quite hard paperwork. So there are still limits to get access to off-label therapy. Also, Korea has very strong clinical trial program, but there are lack of matched clinical trials or information. And always there are patients who cannot be enrolled due to inclusion and exclusion criteria and so on. So to overcome this, our Society Korean Cancer Study Group is running many precision oncology clinical trials. And also, what is very important is not only doing clinical trials, but making this information known to our patients so that they can have access to clinical trials and treatments. So what we did was to develop a homepage, a network we put all the trial information that we are running by Korean Cancer Study Group, and also the sponsor-initiated trials as well, so that patient can click and find the trials they want. So there are more than 200 trials enlisted in this Korean Cancer Study Group homepage, so it's open for patients and sponsors as well. And there are efforts to even broaden this precision oncology clinical trials and sequencing. There's a program called K-Master, which was a government-funded 5-year program, which began from 2017. And it aims to screen 10,000 patients and conduct large-scale genomic analysis. And they aim for appropriate matching for targeted clinical trials and data management. And so far, as of August 2020, out of the aimed 10,000 patients, already 6,697 cases have been profiled. And these are the proportion of cancer patients enrolled in this K-Master program. Quarter of them were colorectal, 40% breast, lung, stomach, followed by sarcoma, biliary, and all very various kinds of cancers. And they are making this data as data sharing and opening the platform so that the data can be shared. And they aim to enroll clinical trial enrollment of 2,000 patients in repositioning and repurposing of 3 INDs and 1 NDA. And there are a total of 18 clinical trials ongoing. And these show the list of precision oncology trials run by a K-Master program. And you can have access to the information about K-Master clinical trials through this KM portal. And as I said earlier, there are always patients who cannot get access to this molecular profiling guide therapy, even these clinical trials are ongoing. So we have created another program called COSMOS, that's Korean Precision Medicine Networking Group study of molecular profiling guided therapy based on genomic alterations in advanced solid tumors. This is a prospective multi-center cohort study of molecular profiling guided therapy based on local NGS-based cancer panel. And we want to adopt this central virtual molecular tumor board that can be accessed wherever you are. And we aim to enroll 300 patients for 1 year from around 30 centers. Target populations are histologically proven advanced solid tumor patients who are no longer benefiting from standard anti-cancer treatment. So the genomic profiling test is done using local NGS, and the test results are shared in the central tumor board, and appropriate matching of therapeutic IND drugs will be done through this central tumor board, and the information from treatment of these patients will be gathered. So we named this trial Cosmos, and we aim to create this ecosystem for precision oncology and created Cosmos. So I brought this definition from Wikipedia. The Cosmos is different from universe, that Cosmos is rather a complex and orderly system or entity at the opposite of chaos. And we should be really doing this, creating Cosmos, not chaos. So the objective of our Cosmos study and endpoints is to assess an adaptability of molecular profiling guided therapy based on MTB recommendation. So the proportion of patients with actionable genomic alterations receiving molecular profiling guided therapy as MTB recommendations will be the endpoints. So they show the study flow. So I showed you the effort that we've been doing with this Korean Precision Medicine Network. And I would like to conclude showing this very simple program. I wonder if you know this program called SIMS. Those of you who have children, they create this many village in person. So I noticed my child doing this, building a nice swimming pool. And I noticed that I talked to my daughter, hey, you are building this swimming pool, but where are the locker rooms and changing rooms and restaurants and everything? Oh, and my daughter answered, oh, I didn't think of that. So that reflected me that in building this village of precision oncology, we've been focusing on this testing and giving treatment. But I also noticed that we have quite many infrastructures that we are lacking, like locker room and restaurants. So that's education of our oncologists, hospital staffs, and also the patient needs education about this precision oncology. And we need platform for data sharing, and molecular tumor board guidelines are lacking, and drug access is a huge challenge. And also to incorporate and make this possible, we need Precision Medicine Act to enable data sharing and data privacy and so on. So that's been a huge task and a very meaningful journey. And we would like to continue this, building this village of precision oncology in Korea to make this Cosmos available. So I'd like to thank you all for your attention, and we'll be happy to answer questions. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Now, I'm checking if there are questions from the audience. At the moment, there are not, but the audience has still the opportunity to ask questions during the panel discussion. So I give a moment to Dr. Kim to join the panel discussion, and we will start in a second. And I will hand over to Mario to start the panel discussion. Please, everyone participating, if you have any questions, just write them down and I will ask the speakers. Thanks a lot.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I'd like to start by thanking our hosts, Alessandra and the Science and Technology Office, for having us here. It's certainly a privilege for me to be able to host this panel. I really want to second Dr. Kim's opinion that this is a really beautiful building, and it's always really nice to walk through the entrance and participate in these events. And today we're covering the Life Science Initiative. As Dr. Kim mentioned, it really does take a village to raise a child, and we're very fortunate here that the Science and Technology Office, along with partners, is actually putting this village together. And today we get to have, a conversation with the village chiefs and the associated partners. So I'd like to start by asking Kelly a question about their perspective, the perspective that Roche has on the Korean market. You mentioned in your slides that Korea is the 11th market in the world for Roche Pharma worldwide. And I'd like to know, how do you see this trend relative to other countries? Has Korea been 11th and we expect it to stay in 11th place, or has it been performing differently relative to other markets that you're in?
Sure. Yeah, without a doubt, Korea is a key country that has a lot of opportunities and growth compared to other countries, especially considering the size of its population and the territory. Korea has grown by about 8% from 2018 to 2020 for us, and we're expecting, even with the current events, about 6% growth rate through 2023. So I think this is a really big achievement considering increased competition and, the market's changing, frankly, all over the world. One thing I would just want to point out, though, is to be clear, our commitment to personalized healthcare in Korea is not tied to this ranking in any way. It's really a combination of a lot of factors. The first and foremost really being the establishment of a shared vision of personalized healthcare or precision medicine with the stakeholders that want to do that. And as I mentioned, it's really important to us that the efforts that we're advancing are really about co-investment. So it's certainly a Roche investment, but we think for things to be sustainable, it really needs to be co-invested with those local markets. So that really supports what we see as a sustaining commitment to PHC.
Now, speaking about local markets, we also have Johnny with us today from Roche, who our listeners haven't met yet. Do you mind giving us just a super brief introduction of yourself?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. I'm Johnny, the general manager of Roche Diagnostics Korea. I have been with the company for almost 24 years. Yeah, so I have been working in Hong Kong, China, Taiwan, and I moved to Korea since last year, March. Yeah.
Now, you are here closer to the ground level of what Kelly was just mentioning. Compared to the other Asian countries, particularly Hong Kong and Taiwan, what have you seen are some of the unique opportunities that Roche can see here in Korea?
Yeah, first of all, I think that all three markets are very different and unique in terms of healthcare system and the policy. But I can see that the overall healthcare systems, the infrastructures are very advanced and well established in all three markets. And governments are very committed in the healthcare to invest a lot of resources to build infrastructures and to improve not only the coverage of the healthcare, but also the quality of healthcare. And particularly in Korea, I also see that the healthcare system, including the clinicians and the policymakers, they are very open to the new innovations. Yeah. And from Professor Kim's presentation, you can see that MDAS, the adoption is very high in Korea and it's universal. And this is very, I may say, the unique opportunities, and not only for Roche, but also that for other companies that really looking for the innovation solutions in the markets. Yeah. So for Roche, I think that as a company that we are actually always to try to launch to offer the innovative solutions both in pharma and in bio. And I think the Koreans in very unique places and a good opportunity for us to launch a product in the markets. Yeah. So and we are not only looking at to balance the patients in Korea, but also that hopefully by adopting the new innovative solutions that in the market also can able to set the standards that in the Asia Pacific regions.
So you see Korea as taking a leadership role because they adopt these new innovations faster.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, adopting new innovations can also come with some challenges. And Dr. Kim, in your presentation, you talked about the need to educate oncologists so that they can become competent in precision medicine. Given that it does take a village to bring these innovations into the market, what other challenges have you seen in education, not for oncologists, but let's say for hospital administrators or for other people in positions of authority over precision medicine? What would you say are the key concepts that they need to learn so that they can do things differently to adopt these new technologies?
It's a very good and challenging question. Yes, to make this precision oncology and precision medicine a reality, in addition to educating the medical academics, we need to really work together, everybody in the hospital, as well as regulatory and patients, I think, so that to make this or information available to patients and also academia and the pharma, we need to digitize this information. And Korea has a very strong EMR program, but the problem is EMRs among hospitals kind of in a lay way don't talk to each other, so it cannot be shared. There are technical issues and the data sharing policy and data privacy act as well, but it would be very important to digitize all these informations and make platform available so that we can share the data. And so this is kind of a very big investment, I think. So previously we need to build hospitals, beds, and all these labs and things. Like that, we now need to build this digital platform and also invest on these servers and all things so that we can make this possible. So I think we need some kind of precision medicine in precision regulatory effort and precision administration also as well. Yeah.
Mario, there is a question from the audience which actually is related to your question, so I'm gonna ask it now. So it's for Dr. Kim, and this person applauded the efforts for precision medicine in Korea. But the question is whether patient organizations are partners in building that village.
Yes, that's a very, very important aspect. So we need to make this precision medicine a participatory medicine, so that we say that there are 4 Ps and 1 P is a participation from patients. So patients are at the level of, they are very interested in getting access to care, drugs and new tests. And Korean Society of Medical Oncology is working with Korean Cancer Coalition. I'm sorry about the patient advocacy group, so that we can work together with our patients. And so the effort that we have been doing was, as I showed you, making the clinical trials available, so the information is available for patients. So we put the clinical trial information onto our website so that patients can search. So we are making little progress, but we have to admit that we haven't been before. So it would be very important to work with our patients to make this possible.
So I am going to keep you on the hot spot just a little bit longer because Kelly also had a question, I think, related to access to real world data. So Kelly, if you don't mind enabling your microphone, and this question is also for Dr. Kim.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Mario. Dr. Kim, I was curious what you see as the biggest barrier to stakeholder access to real-world data to support personalized healthcare. I know we've talked a little bit about technology infrastructure, concerns around data policy and privacy, the expertise needed to make the data analysis ready, as a few of them. But I would be really curious to hear your thoughts on what are the biggest ones and how could we overcome that?
Yes, I think all those components you mentioned, these are a barrier, but I think the technology is not the biggest one. So we have enough IT infrastructure and all EMRs in hospitals, but as I mentioned before, these EMRs don't talk to each other. So we need to really make a platform so that the data between hospitals can be shared. And so the biggest challenge would be, I would say, would be the data privacy issue and regulations that makes this sharing hurdle. So that we need to work together with our government. And governments are very kind of open for these discussions as well, but there are certainly more progress to be accomplished.
There is another question related to data, and it's for all the panel members. So can you please comment on data ownership? Who owns the data and is allowed to give access? Who wants to start?
Well, that's a really great question. Well, we just had Dr. Kim answer a lot, so I'll give her a breather. I think, Johnny, because in your position as manager, you might be dealing with this issue a lot. Who owns the data?
Yeah, this is a great question. Yeah, actually, these questions, I think not only in Korea, I think many of the countries, companies are talking about this. Yeah, so not only the data privacy, data ownership, as well as the data residency, all the hot topics currently we are having now when we talk about digitalizations. Yeah. First of all, I think that is of course really subject to the government regulations. Yeah, but for us, definitely we don't own the data. Yeah. This data belongs to the patients or maybe also to the hospitals. Yeah, so definitely as the company that we don't own the data. But we want to try to provide the tools and the insight how to make use of these data to make it become more structured data, aggregate the data to provide the insight that and to help the clinicians to make a better decision support. Yeah. So and as mentioned by the Professor Kim, that actually there's a long way to go to overcome how to use the data, the privacies, because in terms of technologies and then even infrastructures, I think it's relatively easy to overcome. Yeah, but the policies and regulations are actually I think that as a company also we have to work closely together with governments and also the hospitals, the whole health system, including the patients. How then do we work together to overcome these problems? Yeah.
Right. And it seems that this is a little bit of a work in progress because it has still to be fully legislated. Mm-hmm. And maybe this is the challenge for the hospital sharing because it's an issue of data ownership. Does the hospital own it? Does the patient own it? And who exactly gives permission for sharing, right?
Yeah. And currently, I see some of the cases happen with the consent of the patients that allow to use the data by hospitals that they can use the data to generate some insight or generate some for the patients or for the hospital that the clinician to make decisions. But how can we widely adopt these data that in the much bigger scale or that to generate meaningful data at scale? That's a question that not only Korea but also on the whole world have to work closely together how to find the solutions.
Right. So now continuing on this issue of data, Kelly, in your slides, you also mentioned that among the adoptions that Korea has done was at the Seoul National University Hospital to adopt the SciAps platform for precision oncology. And I noticed that Roche is an investor in SciAps. So what were the unique benefits of their technology and how does that fit into the collaborative relationship that Roche has with SNU Hospital?
Yeah, so Roche is an investor in SciAps, as you noted, through the Roche Venture Fund. So we've definitely been interested in multiple companies that are trying to advance precision oncology, applying some abstraction and curation to data to make it, as I've been saying, sort of analysis ready. Interestingly, Roche was not directly involved in the negotiations between SciAps and Seoul National University Hospital. It was sort of an organic development that they had progressed on their own. We were certainly very keen to understand Seoul National University's hospital interest in a platform like SciAps to understand how they've adopted it, and will be incorporating both the insights into clinical practice as well as how that may generate data. So, we are in the United States, for instance, where SciAps has its core business. We have been customers of their data sets, very similar to how we are customers of Flatiron's data sets, as they're an independent subsidiary of the Roche Group. So in general, we definitely support the entry of these types of companies into these markets, because it's really one of those critical pieces, as I noted. Data as it sits in an electronic health record is vast, but not highly usable in its current form. And it's companies like SciAps, like Flatiron, that actually go in and apply combinations of technology and human curation to make sense of those data elements and to package them in a way that makes them able to be analyzed by researchers within the hospital system, as well as industry partners like ourselves.
Okay, that's interesting. We have another question from the audience, right?
Yeah, we have more than one, actually.
Okay, great.
First of all, it's to Kelly. Kelly, you mentioned digital patient tools. Are you talking about behaviors and possibly wearables? We know how much behaviors affect health. Can you share, please, what Roche is doing in the self-care domain? Thank you.
Certainly. So I don't know that I would necessarily classify it as self-care, but certainly we have a tremendous amount of focus and effort underway in the digital space, particularly exploring what forms of either active or passive monitoring can support patients' journeys on that the idealized journey that I showed you. We think that being able to monitor patients, whether it's sort of day-to-day behavioral things or their capacity to conduct specific tasks, as being really critical to timely decision making, adjusting therapeutic dosages, et cetera. And actually, I know we're talking a lot about oncology here today, but we see the most promise in this space really in the neurological space, things like monitoring multiple sclerosis, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's, largely because they're chronic and largely because patients spend the vast majority of their time sort of out, living their life and don't want to be, nor are they, seeing their doctor very often. So the short story is we're definitely investing a lot of time and energy there. One of the obstacles to overcome that we're eager to advance the overall field with our industry partners is the validation of the endpoints in these spaces, so that there's a commonly held understanding, across stakeholders of what constitutes a useful and clinically meaningful endpoint in this digital space. So that's something we are working on.
There are also other questions. This one is for Dr. Kim. Dr. Kim has explained that sometimes it is difficult for patients to get access to medicine due to off-label use. What has to happen that regulatory and government authorities change their definition of disease towards the molecular characteristics rather than the organ concerned? I can repeat it. You explain that sometimes it's difficult for patients to get access to medicines due to off-label use.
Yes.
what has to happen that regulatory and government authorities change their definitions of disease towards the molecular characteristics rather than the organ concerned?
So how can we make government to change their mind about this concept of disease?
Yeah.
Not organ-based, but based on genomic profiling and so on. So that's been a very huge effort of our society, that we have created a task force team between Korean Cancer Study Group and Korean MFDS, Ministry of Food and Drug Safety, and we've been working together to improve our understanding of this. So to facilitate this tumor agnostic approval, so I think the outcome will slowly turn out. So we've been doing this on regular basis. And I think we need very strong and continuous effort with persuading our regulatory bodies. Also, the clinical trials are a very strong tool to show that this tumor agnostic approach is the way that we should be doing. Our Cosmos study will be a good example to make this ecosystem a great start, and also the K-Master program as well. So I'm sure there will be some progress.
May I add on something here? So, yes, I think that the challenge here I would see is to better generate enough evidence to show to the government that the value of the medicines to the patient and the healthcare systems. And here actually is another example of the real-world data can help. So also from Kelly's presentation, you can see that if we are able to collect this data to generate some we call it clinical regulatory grade data, that can show that the government that the test, a new test, maybe not in Korea but also other countries, that really help to improve the patient outcome and even to benefit the whole healthcare system. That's possible to help to convince government to accelerate the approval of the test. So that is another example that to how that digitalization, the real data to help us to make the test or the drugs that may be more accessible to the patients.
There is a metaphor from startups and innovation that sometimes innovation is like you are trying to take off on the airplane while you are still building the airplane. And it sounds like we're a little bit in that situation where we're trying to deploy these new technologies, but we are still trying to build the infrastructure, the legal, the technical, and the financial infrastructure to be able to support these innovations. We had a question from Kelly to Dr. Kim, but I think this is a great question that I'm going to ask all three panelists, which is, let's suppose that we actually get this airplane into the air. What does it look like 5 years from now? How is our cancer treatment going to change 5 years from now if we can get all of these pieces into place? Dr. Kim?
So I think in 5 years, hopefully, precision oncology will be the mainstay of treatment. So that we'll be seeing more and more adoption of this molecular profiling guided therapy. And what's even more, I think the decision-making personnel will shift to patients. So it's still doctor deciding the treatment. That's a big part, but it'll shift more to our patients because of this move of innovation to make this precision oncology, and all this information will be shared to patients. So they will come more and more with their sequence in their cell phone and picking advice for their best treatment. So that I think will be a real change.
Yeah, for me, I think this precision medicine means that to find the right patients, to give the right treatments at the right time. Yeah. So yeah, if I have all these already, I think that we, as Professor Kim mentioned, that I think we have more transparency to the patients. Yeah. So and that we have more options from the doctors and then for the patients to choose what's the best treatment options for the patients. So then they can receive the treatments at the right times. To save your life, and then to even that have a more better quality of life for the cancers. So the cancers oncology will no longer become will probably become the chronic disease. Yeah. So that and even that is curable. Yeah.
Kelly, so this was your question, but I'm just reflecting it right back at you. So what do you think?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I always use 5 years because I think it's a little bit of a tricky time frame, right? Because I think when you're talking about systemic changes, 5 years starts to feel like not very much, and we're not necessarily getting into that idealized 10-year future. You know, in the 5-year time frame, what I am really hopeful to see is kind of an evolution in people's thinking about the utility of data, both ranging from the patient's perspective on what impact they can have on systems by kind of liberating the use of their data, and then how ultimately that will translate into policy changes at the local levels that will allow access to appropriately de-identified, anonymized, and safeguarded data. I think that will also drive innovation from kind of a technology and connectivity point of view that will evolve sort of these baseline systems to be more interoperable, right? I think that it will pave the path for there being reason to have more clearly defined data fields, capturing of structured and unstructured data in a way that's really meaningful. And then I think on the clinical side, we'll have made good progress in this field of tumor agnostic and really going by molecular drivers. So it's also a lofty combination of things, but I think if we can make really big moves in the understanding and use in a responsible way of the clinical and genomic data to drive a lot of this, I think that will be the most meaningful and sustaining benefit in the 5-year time frame.
Yes. Okay, we have another question from...
I think we have 2 questions more like technology oriented and they can both Johnny and Kageti can answer. It is well known and also mentioned today that Foundation Medicine is an innovative genetic profiling provider in Roche Group, which is essential for PHC or precision oncology. But FMI is a centralized lab requiring the patient's specimen collection to the lab. The model does not fit for certain countries, including Korea. Could I ask Roche or Roche Diagnostics plan for decentralization of genetic profiling for local PHC or clinical trial? Johnny, you want to start?
Yeah, this is a good question. I think that, exactly that. I think for the precision medicines, I think one of the important data that we need is about the genomic profile. Yeah, and currently the FMI is not available in Korean market, but FMI is one of the options. Yeah, actually there's a lot of different options in the market in Korea, as mentioned by Professor Kim, that actually that there's a lot of genomic next-gen sequencing testing that actually have been done in the Korean market. And Roche Diagnostics itself also they have our own solutions that to offer that in the Korean market as well. Yeah. So FMI is one of the options. Yeah. So but that's one options that will be also available in the markets. And I mean for us that is make sure that regardless different options that we make sure that people are able to have the access of the MDAS testing. Yeah. To get the genomic profile, and that also that they can have enough information for the clinicians to make their treatment decisions.
Right.
Kelly, do you want to add anything about?
I'm sorry, I think that question was directed at me, but I couldn't quite catch it.
No, I mentioned if you want to add anything. Otherwise, I have another question from the audience. So far, the last one I can ask to you. Okay.
Please go ahead.
So NGS is very powerful tool, but it takes a lot of time and money still. And the detection sensitivity is not enough to diagnose the early stage cancer patients. Does Roche have any good plan to solve this limitation?
Johnny, I'm happy for you to take that one.
No problem, yeah. It's really depends on the need of the patient and what answer that what kind of question that the clinicians want to ask. Yeah. So we in general I would say that two type of the NGS, two type of I would say the sequencing testing. Yeah. So we are really that to very targeted. We know what kind of mutations we want to identify. That actually that we target the sequencing profile, which is relatively faster and cheaper. Yeah. So if there's something that we don't know, yeah, which kind of the mutations that the patient have, yeah. So that we can go for the full genomic profiling, which is like FMI solutions or others NGS solutions. Yes. So first of all, this really depends on what the questions what the information that clinicians that want to have for the patients. Then we adopt different technologies and tests. But at the same time, it's also our responsibility, our goal that really try to make the NGS test more accessible, affordable, and to the markets like in Korea. Yeah. And I see that Korea already have a very good, I would say, the infrastructure in place already. Yeah. I think most of the lab in Korea have an NGS lab. Yeah. So that is, I think we have a very good starting point here in Korea that to roll out the precision to further to roll out the NGS test in Korean market and to try to and also that and to further to drive the adoption of the precision medicines. Yeah. Yeah.
So that actually, I think it some of these challenges, I think that it speaks sometimes to the unique conditions that we have here in Asia. We were thinking about 5-year plans, and as Kelly said, it's important to think about things in a practical way. And something that, I've noticed certainly being here is that smaller countries in Asia tend to move faster in some respects. So you've worked in 3 out of the 4 Asian tigers: Korea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Singapore. So you've got 3 out of 4. And in terms of resolving these issues, whether it be around cost and around government regulation, what do you see particularly in these key countries, and how does that play to its competitiveness against other countries that have more resources and larger markets?
Yeah. Thanks for the question. It's a very interesting question, sir. First of all, I think Korea is not a small market. Yeah, it's actually look at the healthcare index. Yeah, by country, actually Korea is on the top of the list. Yeah, so and they actually it's very advanced in infrastructures, and they make a lot of ways in many areas. For example, the case quarantines and then case diagnostics in managing COVID-19. Yeah, so. But yes, you're right. I think that compared to like China or Japan, this big market, I think like Hong Kong, Singapore, Taiwan, or maybe Korea. First of all, I think relative the size is smaller than Japan and China, and I think there's relatively less complex than these markets. Yeah. So that's allowed these countries, the healthcare system, I would say, the more agile that to respond to the changes and adopt the new innovations. And I also see that these countries also have very advanced the infrastructures, and even the regulatory side is quite advanced, I would say. Yeah. So that would be easy that for these countries to set the standards, yeah, to pilot, and most importantly to have some pilot to show the values of these new innovations. That is set the standard to show that to other governments, to other countries, that to see how this will benefit, how these innovations that will really benefit to the healthcare systems and the patients. That would be the good examples for other countries, to benchmark and to reference. And this country, the size is relatively small, similar, and then easy also for other countries to really adopt. Yeah, so there's all the models and the pilot established in the countries, and it can be easily to be adopted or replicated in other countries as well.
You said an interesting word there, which is that Korea can be the model to benchmark. And as a follow-on to that, I'm really curious, Dr. Kim, in your position at the hospital, have you seen other countries, whether it's in Asia or other parts of the world, to start looking at the work that is being done here in Korea as a benchmark? We've certainly seen it with the pandemic response, where around the world people are looking to Korea as kind of like the golden standard for a good aggressive action. Have you noticed something similar in oncology at this point yet?
For oncology, we have a very strong clinical trial infrastructure and also EMRs and things. So Korea is a very good country to start with phase 1-2 trials to develop new drugs. So there are many countries benchmarking Korean clinical trial infrastructure and network as well. So Korea is very unique that many cancer patients are treated in big centers, and there are literally no private practice oncologists in Korea. So all patients are treated, not all, but most of the patients, cancer patients, are treated in big centers. So big centers have very efficient treatment system for cancer patients as well as clinical trials. So it's very good place to begin early phase clinical trials in Korea. So they are very motivated oncologists and well-trained clinical trial staffs, and government has invested and hospitals have invested in this building and maintaining high quality of clinical trial centers. So I would like to welcome all this Swiss network to invest in Korean clinical trials so that we can probably make new indications for Korea.
I did a little bit of digging to see what you have done before, and I noticed that you actually spent some time at the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute in Boston, correct? Boston is my hometown, so I was really happy to find out about that. But you know, the Dana-Farber Cancer Institute is also considered one of the leading organizations in the world. And following on what you just said, I'm really curious, even in these leading ecosystems. So Boston is definitely a heavyweight in biotech, as is Switzerland. What would you say in that case would be a key advantage that investigators or pharmaceutical companies could access here in Korea? Is there anything here that you feel here in Korea we can do it better, faster, or more effectively, even when compared to, let's say, Boston or Switzerland?
Mm-hmm. So as I mentioned before, the clinical trial infrastructure, and there are certain disease types and molecular alterations that are more common in Asia than in Korea. We know we learned a lot from this success story of LSI and Tarceva for EGFR mutation story in non-small cell lung cancer that was more common in Asia, so that they succeeded from trials here, as well as crizotinib story that was done in Korea. So we have a good molecular profiling done through this MDAS that was began reimbursement in 2017. So many hospitals are keeping this records of local MDAS testing results. So it will be easy for Koreans to find patients with certain molecular alterations. So it would be a very strong place to start phase 1 oncology program. So patients can be enrolled faster and more efficient way. So I would like to welcome these biotechs and companies to come to us for finding clinical trial spots. And we have a strong networking within Korean Cancer Study Group to allocate these trials to find new sites for you and as well. So, and Connect is helping as well. So there is also government effort to foster early phase oncology clinical trials as well. So.
Kelly, I'd like to bring you in, and I'm not sure if you're at freedom to share, but it would be interesting to know, is there anything on your side in Roche that within the next 5 years you want to be bringing in to the clinical trial infrastructure? Is there something you can actually share with us about that today?
Well, I mean, it's just very basically that it's a tremendous area of focus for us. And, you know, I made quite a point to talk about that 96% of patients that are not treated in the context of a clinical trial and how we really want to leverage the data generated there. But to be very clear, that is not to detract from the emphasis on really growing that 4% to a much larger share, because, you know, just the opportunity to advance a lot of these initiatives more quickly is really important to us. I think we also, similar to in this sort of patient care realm, we're really trying to consider, as these data sets develop, as you have more penetration of next generation sequencing and comprehensive genomic profiling, how do we really take full advantage of that for patient identification and enrollment in trials? So what we're trying to do through some of these ecosystem efforts that I described up front, such as what we are doing in Australia, we aren't trying to just sign kind of one and done collaborations within these countries. We're thinking, okay, now that we've established a shared vision and, you know, initiated some activities around increasing profiling of patients, creating a path toward those molecularly guided treatment options, how do we then layer on, based on that really strong foundation, how do we layer on initiatives that will advance sort of that broader ecosystem? And one of those is definitely going to be understanding how we can progress clinical trials within those. So that's certainly something that we will be discussing with a lot of our partners across these countries.
And what would you recommend to the people who are tuning in right now or who may view the recording later, if they have any unique ideas or resources that they would like to implement within the context of these new initiatives? What's the best way, let's say, to establish a collaborative approach towards Roche?
Yeah, I mean, I think the point that we're talking about, the multiple stakeholders here, is really a critical one, right? We've talked today about everything from patient organizations, who are absolutely critical here, the clinical partners, the provider associations, like Dr. Kim is representing, the multiple industry stakeholders, right? I think for everyone to kind of consider what is that line and sort of the angle for advancing the thinking among any of those. If we're doing this right, we're going to be bringing all of these conversations together to figure out who can influence and advance what part of the collective agenda. Certainly, we are open as Roche to hearing, you know, the ideas. I think that we don't take lightly the commitment to sort of global collaboration on this scale, which really is driven locally, in understanding what are those different points of view. So, you know, certainly reaching out to us to discuss those things is certainly an open door as well.
Great. And back to Dr. Kim. So what of all of the stakeholders that you have, which one would you say you would really like to hear from for clinical trials working together with you? Is there any key stakeholder that you find has been participating with us that you would particularly like for them to encourage them to reach out and to be a part of your initiatives?
Well, there are, all the components are important, but I would say regulatory bodies, like government, they have a key to approving these trials and making these trials even more efficient. So I think we need to invite these government stakeholders to really play part in this building ecosystem for precision oncology. And also the patient group, as you suggested earlier. So.
Right, so the patient group as well as regulators are the ones that are in short supply now. Well, the good news, I guess, is that with the participation of the Science and Technology Office and with the implicit support of the Swiss Embassy, the Swiss government can be a partner and a collaborator in helping to reach out to regulators and establish good practices. To close off the session, I would love to invite now Alessandra from the Science and Technology Office to provide her thoughts and opinions as we come to an end for today.
On my side, I think everything has been said. I really would like to thank all the speakers of today because of their valuable contribution and active discussion. I'd like, first of all, to thank Kelly to be here with us so early in Switzerland. And also Dr. Kim and Jonitze, really thanks for your time because behind the event itself, there has been also a lot of preparation. And also Mario, thanks a lot. You are a good friend and of the Swiss Embassy and also a really good colleague. So thanks a lot for supporting us in all your initiatives. But other than the participants of today, I'd like to thank also the Korean Ministry of Health and Welfare, the Swiss State Secretariat for Education, Research and Innovation, the Korean branches of Roche, Roche Diagnostics and Novartis, because it's thanks to their support that we can make this online and offline in a COVID-free condition possible. And also like to thank the co-organizer of today's event, the Korean Health Industry Development Institute, KIDI, for this the cooperation and coordination of the activities. Then obviously I'd like to thank all the participants, hoping to meet everyone soon and live and not just online. As you can see in the slide that my colleagues are sharing now, there are our contacts. So for everyone who has still questions can contact us by email, but also please follow us on LinkedIn to be always updated on the next events. Now, I'd like to ask everyone participating in this event to smile because we are going to take a screenshot in order to have also Kelly together with us and having a gallery. So please smile, all of you in the camera, and Kelly and me in the screen. Done? Okay, so we can conclude today's event and thanks again everyone. Thanks a lot.